Good evening. This is Chair Hemalata Dandekar, and I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Deputy City Clerk Kevin Christian, will you please call roll?
Commissioner Hopkins.
Here.
Commissioner Khan.
Here.
Commissioner Quincy.
Here.
Commissioner Shorsman.
Here.
Commissioner Wolkin.
Here.
Vice Chair Jorgensen.
Here.
Chair Dandekar.
Here. Thank you. So let the record reflect that commissioners are present through teleconferencing. I'd like to remind my fellow commissioners and staff to help us reduce background noise by muting your phone or microphone unless you're speaking. The first order of business for this meeting is the annual officer election. As stated in the Planning Commission bylaws, each year the commission must select a new chair and vice chair to serve a one-year term. It's been a pleasure to serve this one-year term as your chair, and I am now opening up the floor for the nomination for the position of chair.
I'll nominate Commissioner Jorgensen, our vice chair.
Commissioner Jorgensen for vice chair.
I'll nominate him for the chairperson role.
Yes,
But I do believe he is our current vice chair.
He is.
and I will second that motion.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second to elect Commissioner Jorgensen as the chair. Do we have any competing nominations that anybody would like to make? I see none. So we have a motion and a second to elect Commissioner Jorgensen. Will the city clerk please call the roll of the motion?
Commissioner Quincy.
Yes.
Commissioner Khan.
Yes,
Commissioner Hopkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Shorsman.
Yes.
Commissioner Wolkin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Jorgensen.
Yes.
Chair Dandekar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Commissioner Jorgensen, Vice Chair Jorgensen is now elected as to the position of chair. We have one more item before I hand over the chair to him, which is to have a nomination for the position of vice chair. Do I have a nomination and a second?
Yeah, I'll nominate Commissioner Quincy for vice chair.
Commissioner Quincy for vice chair. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Khan seconds. Are there any other competing nominations for this position? Seeing none. Will the city clerk please call the roll of the motion?
Commissioner Wolkin.
Yes.
Commissioner Khan.
Yes,
Commissioner Hopkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Quincy.
Yes.
Commissioner Shorsman.
Yes.
Former Vice Chair Jorgensen.
Yes.
And former Chair Dandekar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Commissioner Quincy is as elected to vice chair. I will now hand over the chairing of this committee to Chair Jorgensen. It's all yours, Mr. Jorgensen.
Thank you. You've been a great chair.
Thank you.
And also I wanted to note and congratulate Commissioners Quincy and Wolkin for being reappointed to the commission. That puts us all we're all together again. the same group. We have quite a bit of experience, and it also seems like even though we have a bunch of individual interests and specialties and concerns, when we communicate and talk about all of the items that come up, we end up, I think, with a very comprehensive view and review of the project. So I expect that'll continue. I think our commission's done a really good job that way. So let's hope that continues. The first item then is consideration of the minutes from the last meeting, which is back at the 14th of April. So are there any edits to the minutes at all?
I don't have any edits, Chair Jorgensen. I'll make a motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve. A second?
Second the motion to approve.
So is there any further comment? None. I don't see any. I'm not, Kevin, I'm not seeing anybody else except the person who's speaking on my screen. I don't know if I've got a setting that's off, but. Makes
Yeah,
the
there's
screen
two,
quiet.
there's a setting. Yeah, there's a gallery setting you can set or a speaker setting.
There we
Up
go.
at the top of
There it
the
is.
screen,
Good.
there are two options.
Yeah. I somehow didn't go to that corner and because now I'm outside. How about that? So let's vote on the minutes then. We have a minute. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Could we have the deputy city clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Hopkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Dondekar,
Yes.
Commissioner Khan, Commissioner Khan,
Yes.
Commissioner Shorsman,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolkin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Quincy,
Yes.
Chair Jorgensen.
Yes.
Motion
So the
passes.
minutes of April 14th are approved. The next item on the agenda is public comment. And this is for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Generally, the items that are brought up tonight will be referred to staff, and if action by the commission is necessary, they may be scheduled for a future meeting. Deputy Clerk Christian, are there any public comments that you're aware of?
We have nobody asking to speak on items not on the agenda.
Okay, then we'll move on to the next item, number 2, which is a consent item. Matters appearing on the consent calendar are expected to be non-controversial and will be acted upon at one time. A member of the public may request the Planning Commission to pull an item for discussion. The public may comment on any and all items on the consent agenda within the 3-minute time limit. So this is an item to review the general plan conformity report and make a recommendation to the City Council about the compliance of the capital improvement plan to the city's general plan. So Deputy City Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
There's no public asking to comment. There are a couple of staff as attendees. Should you have any questions that need to be handled outside of questions that would be handled by staff for the commission.
Okay, then I'll turn it back to the commission. Are there any commissioners that have concerns that they would like addressed with a full hearing?
This is Commissioner Wilkin. I had a question or two. Do we need to pull this item from consent, I presume, if we have any questions?
That's correct. You would
Yes,
pull
we
it
would,
from-
because we create a hearing if we don't do it with a consent item.
Well, I had a question or two for staff.
Well, then in that case, we won't be voting to make it a consent item. And we'll jump into the full hearing. So the first piece of that is to ask for a staff report. And from there, we can ask questions of staff, and we'll see if there's any public comment.
Thank you, Chair Jorgensen. Staff does not have a report to present. So we do have our Public Works Director as well as our acting city engineer on the call should there be any questions. So we're available to answer those questions. And so we're here to take those comments.
Okay. Well, let's ask questions of staff. Commissioner Wilkin, would you like to jump in?
Sure, thank you. I know the Planning Commission's role is not to determine the priority of projects, but I just did wonder if the staff could give a real brief explanation of how all these projects are prioritized, given that I think there was about $135 million worth of projects, and I think only 35 million or less for the 2-year financial plan. So I was wondering how these were prioritized. Are there some criteria that are used to rank the projects? And just a brief explanation, general explanation, I think would be helpful for me.
Sure. Kevin, are we able to promote Brian and or Matt to step in for that question?
Working on it right now. Thank you, Tyler. Matt and Brian, you should both be able to monitor your microphones and speak up when you need to.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the list of projects is based upon ongoing knowledge of capital maintenance needs throughout the city, such as streets, storm drains, water, sewer, basically assets that the city maintains and must continue to maintain as the need arises. In addition to the asset maintenance needs, the city has, ongoing list of council priorities that we rank projects based upon. We also engage in a rigorous community input process. So starting in January of this year, there was a goal setting input meeting, virtual community forum was what it was called in January, where we received input from the community on what their priorities were. So staff looked at the ongoing maintenance needs, the community priorities, as well as the council goals that were established via the goal setting workshop that occurred in February. And that's where council created the list of major city goals. So we looked through multiple lenses and ultimately prepare a list of projects that as a baseline meets the maintenance needs, and then from there assesses the community priorities moving forward. And another lens that we look through these with is, like I mentioned, the major city goals that include the housing and homelessness major city goal, economic recovery, climate action, and the DEI major city goal as well. So I hope that helps. I can.
Okay, thank you. So does each project in that list have a ranking?
Yeah, internally we look at the maintenance projects as a baseline. So those needs are mandatory for ongoing functioning of the community infrastructure, and then from there we did rank projects based upon various categories, including the past commitments that we have for ongoing infrastructure improvements, as well as public facing infrastructure improvements, existing major city goals, as well as, the ongoing council goals from the prior fiscal and financial plan. So everything was looked at holistically and ranked according to to the criteria. And the list that you see before you are the projects that fit within the defined budgetary limits that we're working with. And one of the things that's in the report too that you may have noted was the additional funding that the city has. So the local revenue measure was expanded to 1.5%. So we're actually able to now do a little bit more, outside of just the annual maintenance projects. So the list has expanded.
All right. Are those rankings for public information or are those internal?
Those
like
are
you mentioned?
internal. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I have one quick additional question, Chair, if that's okay with you.
Yes, it's
sure. In looking at the list of transportation improvements, I did not see the planned roundabout at the intersection of Tank Farm and Orcutt Road. And I was wondering if that was because there are no city funds involved in that project, or if that's already in the existing plan.
Yep, that's already in the existing plan. It was fully funded at the budget supplement last June. So it's not in here because it's basically a carryover project, and we're actually planning to implement that one beginning later this year.
Okay, great. Thank you. Those are the only questions I had.
Do you mind if I add a little bit more in about the CIP review category that the city used to rank and scale our projects? I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Matt Horn. I'm the Public Works Director. But I wanted to, let the commission know that, as the public and the community and the advisory bodies and commissions, brought their input into the CIP project list, it was evaluated through multiple different lenses, including, climate change, diversity, equity, inclusion. Does the project address economic recovery or specifically address pandemic response? And during the pandemic, the city was required to reduce our capital budget. And so some projects the community was expecting to have be built this year were delayed. And so projects that we needed to delay, we also prioritized for funding to make sure that we could make good on past commitments. We also looked at our core infrastructure. Does it make sense to build these projects now, or if we delay the project, is it going to create a cost savings for us or create an additional cost down the road? So it's the capital improvement plan is looked at through multiple different lenses and prioritized in a multifaceted way.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Shorsman.
Yeah, if Commissioner Wolkin is done with his questions, since we made this a hearing item, I have a couple of questions as well.
Sure.
On the attachment that shows the list of projects, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly, because at the top of the first column, or I guess it's the third column technically, it says fiscal year 21-22, and then at the top of the next column it says fiscal year 21-23. Is that supposed to be 22-23? So is it supposed to show 2 consecutive years, and that's just a typo, or is that?
Good catch. That is a typo. It should say 22-23.
Okay.
Yeah, these are consecutive years. Yeah.
Kind of what I was assuming, but I just wanted to make sure. And then I noticed in reviewing the list that there seems like there are some things on it that have already been completed. And conversely, there are some things on it that have probably been on it for years, but have still not been completed. And I don't know if they really will be completed in this next 2-year period or not. I guess that gets back to the question that Commissioner Wolkin had about prioritization, but things like dredging Laguna Lake and the Prado interchange. And then I know because I swim at Sincheimer Pool, that the Sincheimer pool house roof was just replaced. And that's one of the things that is on there and seems like it's already been done. So how often is this list combed through, and how realistic is it for this 2-year plan?
Yeah, so this list was looked at every line for the need for these improvements. So a lot of these are ongoing maintenance, as I mentioned before, and a lot of them are recurring maintenance needs as well. So there's a lot of projects that carry over year to year because the maintenance is required year to year. And a lot of these facilities, they may have elements of them that are covered 1 year, and then there's another project at that facility another year for a different element. So if you have one in particular you can point to, I can maybe explain one of those in more detail.
Well, I guess I mentioned the Prado interchange. That seems like one that's probably several years out now, but yet there's still money dedicated, I believe. I don't have it handy, but
that one is ongoing. So the Prado Road interchange is a $60 million capital project, and it has to go through a rigorous planning and environmental review phase to really get an approved project per the Caltrans design process. And so Prado Interchange has been on the list for years because we've incrementally funded the work. So we funded the initial the scoping phase with the consultant, and then the preliminary design phase, environmental document phase. And as the years go on, these are time intensive tasks which take a year and a half. And so instead of funding all of them at once and sitting on funding that we're not using, we're funding it incrementally so that we ensure that we're able to expend the funding when we need it based upon the phase. So what you're seeing for Prado Road Interchange in this 2-year budget is a continuation of the project approval and environmental document phase, which is a Caltrans step to really drill down on the preferred alternative for the interchange design, as well as finalize the environmental review. And from there, the second phase in year 2, I believe, is the design funding. So once we get an approved project per the Caltrans process, then we embark on a more detailed and thorough review to get the project up to a buildable set of construction documents over the following year or 2 that are not even on this list. So.
Okay.
Do you mind if I jump in about Laguna Lake?
For sure.
Please.
Year after year, we call those annual asset maintenance projects. So you'll see things like paving. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. You'll see things like paving or sidewalk replacement. Laguna Lake dredging will likely be one of those annual asset maintenance projects. And I say likely because right now it's a pilot project. We've never dredged Laguna Lake, and so we wanted to try it, see how it works, and kind of learn from that project. So you've seen it in past budgets. You'll see it in future budgets. And this was also this project was also deferred with the pandemic. We needed to hold on to as much funding as we could for a particular period of time, so we delayed the implementation of that, and so that's why you're seeing it again.
So not to get too into the weeds on that, but that seems like how does that actually work? It seems like you either dredge a lake or you don't. How does that happen incrementally? Yeah,
and so that's the excellent question. Is like how do you eat an elephant? So the elephant that we sized was, don't quote me on the number, but I believe the project that the community wanted was about $20 million to dredge the lake. We were struggling as a community on how to fund that and whether it was appropriate to put that level of focused effort into that asset. So the pilot project became a way of implementing some minor dredging work, learning from the experience, and seeing if we could find a middle ground in which the community would be satisfied with the lake maybe not the $20 million project, but a lake that had a deeper water level, cooler water, and is more environmentally beneficial to the area. So that was the thought process. As we go through the first project, we'll be learning, we'll be taking feedback. We're trying to come up with a best practice on how to manage that area.
Okay, then I just have one last question. This is probably for you too, again, Mr. Horn, but you mentioned a few minutes ago that the development of this list goes through a rigorous process with lots of community meetings and input from the advisory bodies. Maybe it happened before I came on the commission, but I don't remember having an opportunity to weigh in on the list. I know that's not the purpose of tonight, but is the Planning Commission part of that process, or? So
maybe I misstated that. And so initially our advisory bodies list their priorities to council, and council looks at all the different advisory body priorities, and then, works with the community to hear their priorities, and finally gives the staff a list of priorities to implement. Staff takes that information and develops work plans and develops a capital improvement plan around those priorities, in addition to just the things that we need to do to kind of keep the city running right.
Okay. One thing that I've heard mentioned at some community meetings before, but hadn't seen on the list, was the need for a smaller profiled street sweeper. And I don't know if that has come to your attention at all, but that was one thing, because some of the bike infrastructure requires a different level or a different type of street sweeper to be more narrow, I believe. And I didn't see anything about that on the list. Is that part of the process?
It's part of the process. It's not part of the capital improvement plan. We're trying to implement that through the operating program, and so you wouldn't see it on this list. But as of right now, we want to implement it to be a $300,000 significant operating budget change to our streets maintenance program, where we'll outsource some street sweeping, including some of the more narrow bike paths, things that are constrained, things that won't fit our full size street sweeper. In addition to that, we've tried to augment the downtown cleaning at the same time. And I'm not sure if you might have seen it or not, we do have a sidewalk scrubber and sidewalk sweeper now as well, to try to keep the sidewalks in the downtown more cleanly. It coupled with all the different parklets, they became a little bit more grimy. And so we have a 5-day-a-week sidewalk scrubbing program now too.
Great. Good to hear. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Maybe I'll ask one real quickly of Tyler Corey. So I certainly do recall that the Planning Commission drafted some bullet points to include in the overall advisory committee recommendations about projects, but I can't quite remember when that was. I'm thinking it may have been about 2 years ago, but Tyler may remember better. But we certainly did go through such a process. It's possible it was before Commissioners Shoresman and Hopkins joined us. It's possible.
Sorry, are you referring to the kind of the major Planning Commission priorities that we looked at in the fall? Or
right.
Something?
Was it last fall? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did that in, I believe it was October.
Okay, sorry. It seemed I remember doing it before as well. Good.
Every 2 years. No, that's true. It's a good point. I mean, every 2 years, coming into a new preparation of a financial plan, we get input from the Planning Commission and all of our advisory bodies on their top priorities.
So that's the advice that would have been included in what the Public Works Director, Matt Horn, was referencing, I think.
Yeah, that's a piece of that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good. So I don't see any questions from commissioners. Could I ask the Deputy City Clerk if there's any public comment?
Chair Jorgensen, I have a question.
Good.
Can Can someone elaborate a little on the Napomo Palm parking garage? I remember when we approved that, and I think I read recently in the paper that the construction on that was not going to start until after 2023. But I saw about $6.5 million are allocated towards that. So I was hoping someone could shed a little light on that.
Yeah, I can start, and Matt, you can jump in if you have more to add. Yeah, so the current plan for that project is to phase it, and essentially the budget as outlined, it doesn't include year 3, which is when the construction funding is proposed. But the first 2 years include removal of the adobe at the site, and then also some relocation of PG&E poles and power that is in the way of the build out of the garage, in preparation for year 2 site clearing and preparation for the theater site, as well as the garage to come in year 3. So we're sort of phasing it in. And the reason we're doing that is because the parking fund has been severely impacted due to the pandemic, as well as the lost revenue from the parklets downtown. So they've had to reassess their finances, and based upon what they're seeing, you know, they're unable to secure the debt on the parking structure within the next 2 years based upon their decreased revenue projections. And so that's really the core of pushing it back, is because they've really taken a hit on their finances to enable free parking downtown, to enhance the downtown business activity, economic development, which includes not only the free parking, but as I mentioned, the parklets. And so that really has been the impetus for phasing that in as they are able to recover those revenues, and we figure out a more permanent solution to the parklets, and also raise our parking fees to account for those lost revenues.
And I'll just add that, you know, we completely understand that the Palm Napomo parking structure is a very critical installation, and we'd like to get it going as quickly as we can. The parking fund has introduced several different strategies to council to augment funding to the parking fund to be able to implement the project. Council was supportive of those, and we're in process of trying to implement those.
Thank you.
So
I had a question as well.
Go ahead.
Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. When we did the priority setting earlier this, or I guess late last year, this commission looked at housing and homelessness and then DEI, but I don't really see it intuitively, at least, included in any of these line items. Can you either maybe I missed it, and can you point me to those items, or what the plan is to incorporate those specific priorities?
Yeah, no, I'll start with this one too, Matt. So so what we've done here is assigned the most closely tied general plan policy to the projects. So that's how we've assigned it. So but there's an overlap, obviously, with the major city goals of housing and homelessness. And so if you were to look at the major city goal priorities, you would see the Prado Road interchange and the Prado Creek Bridge and intersection widening project, because they are directly tied to the development of San Luis Ranch and the circulation of that area of town. So that is tied to the housing element of the major city goals, but I'd have to look for where it is on here. I think it's the circulation element of the general plan. So it's in there, and there's, like Matt mentioned before, there's multiple lenses to look at this through. So we are touching on that element of council's goals and the community goals, but it seemed to most closely align with, I think, the circulation element, as I mentioned. Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah. Let me just add a section in here too. Is, you know, when we were developing the information for the Planning Commission tonight, the thought was to really provide the information for general plan conformity. Knowing that, we didn't include an exhibit that would be very helpful for this question, but you can find it on the council hearing for strategic budget direction. And that basically breaks down different operating program costs. So the people in CIP projects, the projects that implement the different major city goals. And so they're broken down and tallied by climate action, open space or sustainable transportation, economic recovery, housing and homelessness, and then diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the city is focused, millions of dollars into those different goal categories. And as Brian stated, that I guess that's the great thing about a lot of the projects we implement. They do touch on several of the goals at the same time. So we make the best selection possible in our minds.
Great, thank you. That really fully answers my question. Appreciate it.
Any more commissioner questions? So I'll go back to the deputy city clerk and ask if there's any public comment.
We have nobody asking to comment on this item.
Okay. Well, do I have a motion to approve the recommendation that's in the staff report?
I will move to forward the recommendation to City Council that all projects and purchases in the capital improvement plan proposed as part of the 21-23 financial plan comply with the city's general plan.
Nice motion.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
And I'll second it. I'll do the easy part.
So a motion by Commissioner Khan and seconded by Commissioner Shoreman. Is there further comment or discussion? I'll jump in and say a couple things. I'm glad to see so many things moving. I just see the city looking very different 3 or 4 years from now. And I'm glad to see, for instance, the work at the Mission Plaza for the cafe and the restroom redo. I think that's an important thing to do, one of the key elements of the Mission Plaza planning. And I'm glad to see a pilot of the Laguna Lake dredging. It's something I've followed for a number of years, and there's all sorts of issues about contaminants and trucks moving in and out and everything. And a pilot sounds like a very smart idea to give us a good sense of, is it realistic to do the whole thing? I was also glad to see so much to really push the resource recovery, the reclaimed water facility, and more piping along Broad from Tank Farm to Aero Vista. I think that's a really important piece of what we've got to do here. I don't know if we'll be drinking that water someday, but it makes me feel a little better that at least it's a possibility given the kind of weather we're having. So I'm pleased, and I found actually the conformity matrix easy to follow, and I really appreciate the work that Public Works has done to put this all together into something coherent. So I'm glad to support this. Any further comment from the commission?
I guess I'd like to make a comment if that's all right. I agree with Chair Jorgensen. It was all very easy to read, and but I also agree with Commissioner Wilkin that it seems like an enormous amount of money. And so I guess it's a little bit of a request, maybe Tyler or one of the other staff that's here tonight, if just for our information, if we could see some sort of, since it is so much money and it's obviously not, at least it's obvious to me that I don't think all of this stuff could be done in 2 years. I would love to see some sort of prioritized list if it was submitted elsewhere to City Council or something, if that could be emailed to us just so we could see how things break down for the next 2 years. That would be helpful.
Sure. Thanks for that question. And yes, we can provide that information and make sure everybody has that so they can track the progress.
I appreciate that. I think one of the values of something like that is we do represent the city in our dealings with neighbors and friends and everybody else, and these questions do come up. And so it helps us to be better equipped if we can help answer them, even though the strict issue at hand is whether we believe that these projects conform to the general plan. And I'm not hearing any specific comments that they don't. So that's the motion in front of us. So are we ready to vote? Deputy City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Khan,
Yes.
Commissioner Shoresman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hopkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolkin,
Yes.
Commissioner Dondekar,
Yes.
Vice Chair Quincy,
Yes.
Chair Jorgensen.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Chair
So-
Jorgensen,
Yes.
would you mind if I provided just a little bit of information on CIP project delivery for the commission?
Sure.
So I know the delivery and priority of the different CIP projects is of interest, and delivery of the entire capital plan portfolios of high interest to us all. I think with the passage of Measure G20 and the large scale of the city's capital improvement plan, you're right to question our ability to deliver that level of investment. We have commissioned a study to come in to our CIP engineering group and have them look at the policies, our procedures, and our staffing levels necessary to deliver a much larger capital improvement plan. So that work is already underway. And so we will be embarking on that now and implementing the changes along the way. And council has also carved out a section of funding to address that need and the suspected results of the study soon. And so project delivery is of high importance to us, and we're trying to address it in an expedited manner.
I think that would be a big help, and I really appreciate it. We understand the city council's role is to set these priorities and to see that it's all done, but we do get asked ourselves. So this would be a help if we understand it as well. Thank you very much. So I'm ready to move on to the staff updates and agenda forecast. Deputy Director Corey.
Yep, thank you. I'm looking out into our 2 meetings in May right now. And in the first meeting in May, it's May 12th. We do not have any items. And so the May 12th meeting will be canceled. So we're going to look out to the meeting of May 26th. And we have a couple items on that meeting. First item is the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and Element Update. So that will be coming before you, as well as a 23 lot subdivision at 500 Westmont. It's in the R1 zone, and it's at 500 Westmont Street. And then finally, we're also looking at bringing a presentation to the Planning Commission on just our kind of stormwater regulations and practices. I think there's been some questions that have come up over the last, on several projects in the past. I think it would be helpful just as a refresher as to what regulations are at play and what is the process that a project such as a new subdivision or any new development would have to go through, to contain kind of like pre-post runoff with stormwater. So I'm looking to schedule that. It might be on the 26th, but given that agenda, it might be best to push that off a little bit to a lighter agenda, but that will be also coming before you.
Good report. Any questions?
Yes, I had a question for Tyler. Several months ago, Tyler, there was an item on our agenda in the Orcutt area specific plan. I think it was the Bullock Ranch, and we even got the staff report, and then it was pulled from the agenda. I was just wondering what happened to that project. Is it still kicking, or is it being delayed for a long time?
It's not delayed. There were a couple of questions that the applicant had regarding some conditions that we've been meeting with them on a regular basis to work through. And so it's definitely moving forward. My sense is it'll probably be before you this summer. So probably July, August would probably be when I would anticipate to come back. But I think we're close to resolving kind of all the outstanding questions that the applicant had, and we'll be on the lookout for that to come back in the next couple months.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate that. Any other questions?
Chair,
Yes.
before we leave, I had a comment. I just wanted to thank our former chair, Dandekar, for shepherding us through the pandemic. I think she did an amazing job, and it was a very tough circumstance. So I just wanted to thank her and express my gratitude.
Thank you.
You're here.
Here, here.
Yeah, Commissioner Quincy beat me to it, but I was going to say the same thing, and also wanted to keep the appreciation going. Wanted to thank Tyler for the announcements of the upcoming trainings. I asked him briefly, I think, in an email if he could let us know if there's any trainings, and then lo and behold, the emails started coming. So I really appreciate that, and I hope that I can make some of them in the near future. I think it'll be really helpful to me in my role.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank everybody. I was just mentioning that this is about my 7th, going on my 8th year on Planning Commission. And I learned an extraordinary amount chairing. And I almost wish, I had done this earlier, because it would have made me a better planning commissioner, having learned what it takes to chair and move agenda items along. So I'm delighted that we are moving to this system where we all take a roll in the barrel for a year and chair the commission, because I think ultimately it makes for a better functioning committee. And I think one appreciates what's involved in a different way. And thank you for your words. I appreciate them.
Rolling in a barrel. I hope we're going to go over Niagara Falls this year, but it was a very stressful year last year. Thank you for that, Hemant, very much.
Hopefully we're reaching the end and there's light at the end of the tunnel. I really hope there'll be a time before I'm off the commission when we will be back in City Hall and be able to do this face to face. I miss that a lot.
Yeah, we can talk to each other. Well, thank you very much. So I'm going to go ahead then. I think we're ready to adjourn. I do want to say that the next regular meeting of the Planning Commission will be May 26th at 6 p.m. via teleconference, as far as we know. There we go. I'm ready to adjourn. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Right.